I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the murder of a young dad named Jared Bridegan, who just dropped his twins off at his ex's house, a murder witnessed by a very young child. Here's the story. On the night of February 16, 2022, loving father Jared Bridegan was ambushed in a dimly lit Jacksonville Beach neighborhood after dropping off his twins. A tire mysteriously placed in the road forced him to stop. Seconds later, he was gunned down at close range in front of his terrified 2-year-old daughter. The hit appeared calculated, timed for maximum terror and devastation. Investigators tied the plot to Jared's bitter custody battle with his ex-wife, Shanna Gardner, alleging she orchestrated the murder with her current husband, Fernandez-Saldana, who recruited hitman Henry Tenon for a $150,000 fee. Tenon pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and is now cooperating with prosecutors. In August of 2023, both Shanna and Mario were indicted on first-degree murder, conspiracy, solicitation of a capital felony, and child abuse charges. Prosecutors are seeking the death penalty against both defendants. This is another one of those stories where one parent accused of murdering the other parent. It's hard to understand why you would do that. You know, if these accusations are true, right? Why would you leave your children without a father, regardless of what's going on in the back and forth? Now, a big part of this case was, you know, how it happened. This is an allegation of a murder for hire plot and the emphasis is on plot. There is a plan here on how to take out Jared Bridegan. Matt Johnson, Court TV Justice correspondent, went down to the scene and explains to us tonight exactly how investigators say Jared Bridegan was ambushed and murdered.
On February 16, 2022, Jared had one of his scheduled daddy date nights. After dinner, he dropped off his twin daughter and son at his ex-wife's home in Jacksonville Beach, Florida, and headed home to St. Augustine. On the way, he stopped to get his 2.5-year-old daughter Bexley ice cream. She was in the back seat of his SUV. He then called Kirsten, telling her he loved her and would be home soon. Police say he was the victim of a targeted attack on a one-way road he traveled often. Jared came across a tire police say was intentionally placed right here in the middle of the road in the sanctuary neighborhood of Jacksonville Beach, Florida. That's when someone came out of these woods and ambushed the father of 4, killing him on the spot.
Now, this is the tire that investigators say was in the middle of the road. And the man responsible for putting the tire in the road and the man responsible for taking the life of Jared Bridegan has admitted what he's done. He's admitted it. It wasn't the ex-wife who was there. She was with the twins because the twins had just been dropped off. And that brings us to the first question in our investigation tonight. What is Shanna Gardner's alleged connection to the crime? How do prosecutors and investigators intend to link her to this ambush murder? Let's bring in our guest who's going to help us answer that question. Forensic death investigator Joseph Scott Morgan. He's also the host of the very popular Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan podcast. And also joining us, by the way, Joseph Scott Morgan joins us on the phone. Also joining us is retired police commander Mike King. He's also the host of the podcast Profiling Evil, plus the author of the new book, Wolves in Sheep's Clothing. Thank you both for being here. I'm looking at this. Let's put this up on the screen. Joe and Mike, let's take a look at this. This is a map of where Shanna's house is and the scene of where this all took place. And it's 2.2 miles, but the murder scene, Joseph, is the one-way exit from this subdivision. So it was pretty predictable of where he would be going.
Yeah, and she would have knowledge of this, Vin. Thanks for having me, by the way. yeah, she would have knowledge of this, and she would know the route. In military terms, I think that if you had a tactician on air with you right now, they would refer to the spot as a choke point. That means that you cannot get past this particular spot in the road without driving on the shoulder. Remember, it's kind of brushy over there, maybe a little bit swampy. And all this guy does is he sees this item laying in the road, and this is not merely a tire vent. This is also a tire with a rim on it. So this is really robust. It's meant to impede or stop for this purpose, stop someone. You're not just going to merely drive over this thing.
Now, Mike King, I want you to take a look at this. Take a look at the key players in all of this, in this alleged plot. Henry Tenon is the admitted killer, okay? The man on the left. This is the one who took Jared Bridegan's life. He was renting a property from Mario Fernandez-Saldana. Who is Mario Fernandez-Saldana? He is Shanna Gardner's husband. Okay? Shanna is his wife. Who is Shanna Gardner? Shanna Gardner is Jared Bridegan, the victim's ex-wife, ex-husband. So these two are split on the left. The two in the middle are together. And Mario is connected to Henry because Henry was renting some property from Mario. So looking at this connection, how difficult, Mike, is it going to be to make this connection, right? When you have a murder where the person who's going to be on trial didn't actually pull the trigger and commit the murder itself physically.
Yeah, I think there are too many coincidences in something like this, Vinny. I mean, clearly this guy doesn't know Jared Bridegan. He doesn't hang out with him. He doesn't work at Microsoft. He doesn't go to the church that Jared goes to. And all of a sudden, there's a connection that causes him to make a targeted hit, not an opportunistic hit of some guy trying to rob somebody on the street. This is an execution. And so it's pretty easy to start following the breadcrumbs back to a husband of the former wife, and the husband's connection to him as his landlord. And then, of course, as law enforcement started digging into it and finding evidence that supported the fact that there was a lot more than just a relationship, that he lived in the same building that was owned by Shannon's husband, but that Shanna's married to the guy who somehow is tied to the eventual trigger man. And I don't think it's going to be that big of a jump for the prosecutor to get a jury to start nodding their head that, yeah, there's a direct connection, and it goes back to Shanna, because the husband, he's just in the middle and helping things happen. But she's the one that was having conflicts in the separation, in the management of the children, in custody issues. And I think it's going to be a really tall mountain for them to climb, especially when the trigger man says, by the way, I was doing something at their bidding.
Absolutely. He got a deal for second-degree murder, so they'll try to undermine his credibility that way. But, he's the one filling in a lot of the blanks here for prosecutors. Now, this Florida case, Joseph, reminded me of another Florida case that we're covering involving the murder for hire of another father who was in another custody battle. His name, Dan Markell, law professor. His in-laws, one is his brother-in-law or former brother-in-law, already convicted. Mother-in-law is going to be on trial soon. There were some payments in that one, some checks. In this one, there's also some checks that have been paid to Henry Tenon. And I want you to take a look at these checks. Tenon told police that they would total $150,000, but on the memo lines, one of them says landscaping and clearing. Another one says keeping up with the roof. And then another one says Kickstarter, good luck, allegedly for a new business that they were investing in. That may be where the defense goes with this, Joseph, that, he would do some handy work around and we were going to invest in this new business. Prosecutors obviously saying the business is murder.
Yeah, they've entered into this criminal, and let's face it, I mean, it's a criminal conspiracy at this point in time. So you have to go back and look at the history of how many other times, I think, from an investigative standpoint, how many other times have these individuals paid each other or paid one individual with a check, and how much in the past? Why all of a sudden, this huge amount of money, has fallen into this guy's lap, or what has been promised, as it's turned out, that was going to fall into his lap? I don't understand that. And I think that that's going to be one of the pieces to the puzzle here, Ben. And also the point of origin of these checks, whose accounts are they drawn off of, who signed them, this sort of thing. And that's going to tell the tale. I think that it's going to be really, really difficult. They can say all they want that this is a business arrangement, but I'd have to look at this perpetrator, the trigger puller himself, and ask the question, what kind of business acumen does this guy actually have? What kind of track record does he have? And that's going to play into this as well.
Yeah, let's take a listen to Detective Chris Johns from the Jacksonville Beach Police explaining what investigators believe those checks were actually for.
And in the subject line, it says, Kickstarter, good luck. Can you describe for the court, based on your conversations with Mr. Tennant, what this check was actually for?
Mr. Tennant stated this was the first of many payments that was supposed to be an investment into his pallet company, which was actually payment for the homicide.
Yeah, so Mike, you've got the monetary connection is a huge one. If you're talking about a murder for hire plot, that to me, that's always the crucial piece. There has to be a payment. People don't do this stuff for free.
Exactly. And I think there's a huge amount of pre-planning that we're starting to see in this thing. I go back to the description Joe Scott was giving a few minutes ago as you had that map up there, and the fact that to the west of that home is marshland. So there's really only one way in, one way out. You can wind your way through the neighborhood directly south, but it is a long, twisty road, but you still end up in that same location. So someone had to know that he was going to be on that road. And this isn't a community that this guy lives in. He's making a trip past a location, and somebody would know that he was going to be there about that time. That same somebody is all of a sudden getting checks, and those checks are starting to amount to a huge amount of money. And this idea of is this normal behavior to be writing $5,000 checks or $2,000 checks to a guy who's renting from you just doesn't seem practical. And I think it's all starting to lay this incredibly powerful foundation of premeditation, pre-planning, pre-thought, fantasy, and a whole bunch of deceit.
Absolutely. Our guests are going to stick around. Coming up next, will Shanna point the finger at her estranged husband?
The state of Florida does hereby give notice to the defendant in this case, Mario Enrique Fernandez-Saldana, pursuant to Florida Statute 78204B, that the state of Florida intends to seek the death penalty for first-degree murder charged in this case.
Matriarch of the Adelson family gets arrested.
Terrible. Donna Adelson is facing charges of murder, the death of her former son-in-law, Dan Markell.
Prosecutors say a bitter child custody battle was the motive for the murder for hire plot.
Now that Donna has turned into a defendant, what's next for the Adelson clan?
Now that the ship is really sinking fast, blood doesn't matter that much.
The Matriarch Mastermind Murder Trial. Live coverage begins this August on Court TV.
The state of Florida does hereby give notice to the defendant in this case, Mario Enrique Fernandez-Saldana, pursuant to Florida Statute 78204B, that the state of Florida intends to seek the death penalty for first-degree murder charged in this case. The applicable statutory aggravating circumstances as set forth in Florida Statute 921.141 are as follows. Subsection B, the defendant was previously convicted of another capital felony or of a felony involving the use or threat of violence to a person. Subsection F, the capital felony was committed for pecuniary gain. Subsection I, the capital felony was a homicide and was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification.
It doesn't get any more serious. We're talking about a death penalty case here against the two defendants that are left, Shanna Gardner and her estranged husband, Mario Fernandez-Saldana. Let's take a look at the arrest of Mario Saldana. And as you watch it, I mean, extremely calm, doesn't necessarily seem surprised in the moment, and that's because the man who actually committed the murder, Henry Tennant, had been arrested 2 months prior. So it was an ongoing investigation. He knew that Tennant was arrested, and there's always the possibility, if you have some sort of conspiracy amongst people, that someone is going to flip. And Henry flipped, and they arrested Saldana. And that brings us to the next question in our investigation, because there's two defendants here that are left. Will Shanna point the finger at her estranged husband? Does he become the villain? Because you know every defendant is pointing the finger at someone. And if you're co-defendants and if you are estranged, that's the obvious place to go. Joining us to help answer this question, family law attorney, law professor Randy Kessler. He's also the author of Divorce, Protect Yourself, Your Kids, and Your Future. Randy, great to see you tonight. I want to read this because I find this fascinating. Shanna, her parents have a company, it's a big company called Stampin' Up, and they released a statement. And it was obtained by KTVX. Stampin' Up, which is really Shanna's parents, is aware that Mario Fernandez, Shanna Gardner's current husband, has been arrested in conjunction with an ongoing investigation. Now, this is before Shanna gets arrested. Shanna, Shelley and Sterling's daughter, those are her parents, obviously, and Mario have been separated for an extended period of time. We have no further details about the situation other than what has been reported by the media. This was sent to the company's demonstrators who represent and sell the company's products. So Stampin' Up, which is a big company with folks that work with them and for them, they released this statement. What do you read into that? Does that give us a little hint about perhaps what the defense is going to be here by Shanna and her attorney, Jose Baez?
I think it does. And what's her other play? What other play does she have, right? I mean, this guy who they gave a great deal to and said, you're not going to get the death penalty, even though you pulled the trigger, but if you'll help us get somebody else, we'll give them the death penalty. I mean, she's looking at the death penalty. That's going to make her do whatever she can. It's the only logical play is to say, look, I might have complained about my ex. I might have told my new husband all these horrible things, but I never in a million years thought he would go to this kind of length. It's almost like those cases where people lead someone on the other line of the phone or the internet to suicide. That's going to be her only defense. I can't see any other avenue because there was difficulty between the parties. They had lots of litigation, 300 motions filed in their divorce and subsequent cases. This woman did not like the person who died. There was no love lost there. So how does she get out of this? Well, I was venting to my new husband about what a horrible guy I used to marry. You know, I'd be great if you could do something about it. Maybe she wished it. Maybe she said it. Maybe she flirted with the idea. That's got to be your defense.
Yeah, Joseph Scott Morgan, what are your thoughts about that relationship? Because they're I mean, almost immediately the parents came out and said they've been separated a long time here. As soon as he gets arrested, oh, they're not together anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's easy to roll it off on this guy who, is probably the person that actually set this whole thing up and made the connection. And to Randy's point, she's staring down the barrel of death penalty. And what state are we in? Florida, right? So that becomes a real prospect for her down the road. The idea that one would roll over on the other is not beyond the pale. It's quite the reality, as I'm viewing it at least, that she's going to want to try to save her hide if she possibly can. It'll be interesting to see what her counsel does in this case.
Yeah, Randy, following up here on the on this point, the claim that they had been separated for some time, is that a formal legal sort of maneuver, so there'll be some record to verify that they've been separated for some time? Or does that just mean that, hey, I moved out or he moved out?
It's the second one. I mean, look, right now you're separated from your wife because you're not in the same room with her, right? So there's no such thing as really a legal separation. You can file a lawsuit to say, support me while we're separated. But no, that's just saying they weren't getting along. And really, I think they're making the right play, which is, you know, yeah, she was married to a guy that she didn't get along with. But that's different than this guy. This guy was a criminal that I was married to the second time, and I didn't realize it. And, you know, yeah, I said some stuff I wish I hadn't said about I wish my ex-husband was dead. But I never in a million years would have wanted the father of my children to die. And it'll be interesting to see if she takes a stand and says that. You know, it's got to be either the greatest truthful statement in the world or the greatest acting job in the world, because she's got to put all the blame on him. Now, the next step, of course, is going back to death penalty for someone who didn't pull the trigger. You know, the state may have a little bit of a concern. If I'm on the jury, do I want to put someone to death for getting somebody to hire somebody to kill my ex-husband? But yeah, legal separation is just a term of art. We tell the judge, yeah, the parties are separated, and that's a requirement to get a divorce. You have to be separated. Not having sex anymore is really the definition in most states of being separated. But it's not a real thing that they've been separated for this many months or they got a court order. The parents are just saying they're estranged, they're separated, they're not happily married.
Gotcha. All right. Joseph Scott Morgan, we have to separate now. Thank you so much. Great to see you. Glad we connected tonight. Randy's going to stick around.
Me too.
Up next, where does Shanna's wealth come from? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the murder of Jared Bridegan, a young father raising his family with his new wife years after starting a family with his first wife. Now that first wife is charged with his murder. Here's the story. Shanna Gardner was born into Utah privilege. The daughter of Shelley and Sterling Gardner, co-founders of the very successful craft company Stampin' Up. Her lavish trust income funded a luxurious lifestyle and included a monthly stipend. But beneath the glamour, a darker story unfolded. In 2022, Shanna's ex, Jared Bridegan, was ambushed and executed in Jacksonville Beach after stepping out of his SUV to move a tire in the road. His 2-year-old child watched from the back seat. Prosecutors allege Shanna helped orchestrate the plot, allegedly texting as far back as 2015 that she wanted Jared gone and soliciting a hitman via her then-husband, Mario Fernandez-Saldana, for $150,000. Now charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, solicitation to commit a capital felony, and child abuse, which could carry the death penalty, Gardner vehemently denies the charges. You know, when you take a look at the timeline of this case, there were 3 arrests, and Shanna Gardner's was the last. It was 6 months later. We've got some video of that arrest. You take a look at it. She's arrested August 17th, 2023. The murder was February 16th, 2022. So not 6 months, a year and 6 months. And she was arrested at a home in West Richland, Washington, a nice home, by the way. She had moved there after the murder without her husband, Mario. So they were physically separated. She moved to Washington. Mario was down in Orlando, Florida, almost as far apart as you could get. But after a year and a half, she was finally arrested. Let's take a look at that moment.
Can I be with the kids, or can you at least bring the kids out to me?
Yeah, we'll have to talk to these officers inside, okay?
We have to be.
Marlon, my neighbor, has temporary.
I'm here, Shanna. I'm outside.
Oh, they're gonna call you.
You want some shoes?
Oh, yeah, probably.
Can I
Get some shoes for her. You want me to go get her the shoes? I don't need shoes. There's the shoes for her.
It's gonna be the white vehicle back there. We'll go to the passenger side. Yep.
Best off.
I do have a question for you. It's not regards to the charges at all. Those, the medication that's in that little divider?
Yeah.
What's in those?
I can tell you.
Just the reason I asked is because the jail might not take that divider.
That's fine. I
don't
have
know.
enough in the bottles.
Okay.
I think there was only a day left, is what my mom said.
Okay. And if you have them in the bottles, then that's good.
Yeah.
I just saw that in there, and the jail is pretty picky on prescriptions.
Yeah.
It'll take.
No, I figured the divider my mom can come and get. Because yeah.
Fascinating. Again, not a ton of shock or screaming. You're kind of like, okay, it's my turn to be arrested in all of this. Now, she's hired Jose Baez. Jose Baez does not come cheap, folks. Does not come cheap, especially in a case like this, a death penalty case. And that brings us to the next question in our investigation. It's all about the money. Where does Shanna's wealth come from? Here to help answer that question, Mike King, also joining us, private investigator and founder of Victim News Online. Erica Morse is with us as well. Great to see you both. Okay, let's talk about this wealth. I want to put this up, Mike, because this is fascinating. Stampin' Up. Okay, founded in 1988 by Shanna's mother, Shelley, and her sister, based in your parts, Mike, in Utah, selling high-quality paper craft products. According to Zoom Info, 500 employees. Are you sitting down, Mike? Annual revenue, $300 million. This is a real company. This is real wealth. What are your thoughts about the impact of this wealth on this death penalty trial?
Well, certainly I would think the parents are probably providing some financial support in getting the best attorney. I think every parent would try to do that. So I don't know that it's as much wealth-based as the fact that that's what a parent does, is tries to figure out how to get the best defense for your child if they got into some goofy situation like this. You know, throughout my career, Vinnie, I had so many defendants some who came from families of influence or wealth, others who came from very poor circumstances. And the thing that I found so interesting is in this particular case, there was a monthly stipend, some type of trust that's been set up apparently that was substantial. And I think you may bring that up in a moment, so I'm not going to drop the dollar value, but it was substantial enough that Jared was allowed to stay at home and go to graduate school. Imagine being able to go to graduate school and not have to work or take out loans. And so there was obvious influence that was blessing or benefiting the family. And, you know, I've seen a lot of kids who come from those circumstances that become maybe entitled, but I've also seen kids who come from that and they are just hardworking kids because their family built the business from the ground up. And so it's really difficult. I want to know more about what her background was, because that's the other thing I saw throughout my career so many times is kids who were really good or adults who were really good and functioning well and doing things right, and then all of a sudden getting into the wrong situation or getting involved with narcotic abuse or something else, their behavior changes so dramatically. It's like two different personalities. And so I think we'll learn more about what this personality in this individual was like. but clearly she's got support too. And the family, whether they're laying down smoke screens or they're laying down a little bit of damage control to protect the business, or whether they're doing what I would hope any parent would do, trying to get their kid the best defense possible, is probably what's happening here.
Erica, how does it change the game for Jose Baez and the defense team, right? You're going to have the opportunity, if you have those unlimited funds, right? It's not unlimited, but $300 million a year in revenue, you're going to have some cash laying around. To get the investigation that many defendants don't necessarily get, how much of a game changer do you believe it could be?
Massive game changer. Having an unlimited investigation budget in a case such as this allows for, PIs, in-house investigators to go find and cover anything that could point to one of these other men. We have 3 defendants here, and it's about reasonable doubt, and not just the unlimited investigation budget, Vinny, but also the unlimited PR budget. Especially if this case does not, get under some type of a gag order and it's a free-for-all. Baez, come on, he's the ultimate guy and the ultimate guy when it comes to being able to pull off an unexpected verdict. So I expect him to employ a PR agency who will go out, and let me give you an example. When I searched on Shanna, I didn't find so much initially as a woman. Maybe it was my algorithms, but I was pointed not to her family's wealth, but her entrepreneurial wealth, her independent wealth, her skincare line, her acting career, all of that stuff that she built from the ground up. And so she co-founded a women empowerment organization. There is a website, all of her dealings with nonprofits. I believe that PR effort has already begun and will continue to get larger.
And Mike, what are your thoughts here? It's a death penalty case. There's a lot that goes into preparing for that for both sides. But for the defense, it's almost like it's a separate preparation. In case you are convicted, then it turns to trying to preserve the client's life. This gives you an opportunity to have a completely separate team to be working on that.
Exactly, and this is where you start thinking about, will there be deals that are put in place early on to try to accomplish that? Clearly Tenon, he turned and rolled over because he wanted to avoid the death penalty, and somehow she got targeted after the husband was arrested. And so I think we're going to see people turning and twisting on each other. The fact that they're estranged says they clearly aren't aligned. I wonder what they're going to find from jailhouse recordings and other things during the period of time before her arrest. And then, like you say, Vinny, when it comes to a death penalty case, man, they're not going to stop unturning any stone they could possibly turn, because all they need to do is get one juror to say, gosh, I feel really sorry for that woman. She was pulled into this and never had anything to do with it, and now she's being charged with murder.
Mike King, great to have you on the program. Thanks so much. Erica's going to stick around. Still to come, was there a motive for murder?
What direction does this conversation take?
It's essentially just more about ways that Ms. Gardner is unhappy with Mr. Bridegan, that she would like for him no longer to be alive.
Matriarch of the Adelson family gets arrested.
Terrible. Donna Adelson is facing charges of murder, the death of her former son-in-law, Dan Markell.
Prosecutors say a bitter child custody battle was the motive for the murder-for-hire plot.
Now that Donna has turned into a defendant, what's next for the Adelson clan?
Now that the ship is really sinking fast, blood doesn't matter that much.
The Matriarch Mastermind murder trial. Live coverage begins this August on Court TV.
And what context were they used?
In reference to the death of Jared.
What direction does this conversation take?
It's essentially just more about ways that Ms. Gardner is unhappy with Mr. Bridegan, that she would like for him no longer to be alive, stating, hey, Shanna needs a guy who does permanent disappearing acts. And she says that she needs a magician for stupid, referring to Mr. Bridegan, and asks if she knows anyone who can basically accomplish this.
Things were bitter between Shanna Gardner and Jared Bridegan. I mean, but they shared children, the twins. And Jared Bridegan was not, was going to be a part of their lives. And there was an ongoing tension about all the decisions that go into raising twins together when you aren't together. I want you to take a listen to this interview. Matt Johnson spoke with Jared Bridegan's wife, who is now Jared Bridegan's widow, about this relationship. Let's take a listen.
The relationship between us and his ex-wife was not cordial. Our communications were always in writing because there was not mutual trust between the two households. Unfortunately, are kind of stuck in the middle of that. Jared and I tried so hard not to involve them, not to use them as messengers, not to talk poorly about their mother in front of them. And unfortunately, that favor was not returned. And that was really hard on Jared. He sent so many messages just pleading, like, leave the kids out of it, because his priority was his kids, and that is what mattered to him.
So you've got this ongoing tension. It had been years since the divorce, but does it ever end? And that brings us to the next question in our investigation. Was there a motive for murder? Did Shanna Gardner have a reason, a motive to take out the father of her children? Here to help with our investigation, Randy Kessler and Erica Morse. Randy, take us behind the scenes. I mean, this is not unusual, right? Even though you're separated for years or divorced for years, things still are ongoing.
Right. What Bridegan's current wife or new wife was describing is it's something we hear about all the time. Parental alienation. One parent talks bad about the other parent in front of the children. And what do you do when you're on the other side? You don't want to you don't want to do the same thing in reverse, because it just drags the kids down. And how do you handle that? It's just a horrible situation that we see all the time. Now, to answer your question, what's the motivation? What's the motive? You can't just be a normal person, because her motivation might have been, well, the kids are going to get to be with me all the time. Well, that's not good, right? You want them to have time with their father, and you're going to deprive them of a father. Her best case scenario, she gets away with murder, and the kids don't have a father. So, there's just no real good, honest motive, except sheer anger. And usually those are what we call passion murder. I just can't stand it. I'm at my breaking point, and I flip, and I do something crazy. This sounds like it was premeditated. So either her new husband was sticking up for her and thought he was being valiant and killing off her ex-husband, or she really is just evil. I hope it's, I don't know what it is.
I want to put something else in the mix here, Erica. Some information from Shanna's trust. Like you said, parents, a lot of money. From released financial documents, the legal agreement around Shanna Gardner's trust named Mario, her now estranged husband, as the trustee. But there was a clause stating, furthermore, and notwithstanding the foregoing, when our daughter Shanna shall have no further legal entanglements with her ex-husband, Jared Bridegan, she may elect to serve as the trustee by delivering a signed and notarized document to the trustee then in office. She gets control of her money when Jared is out of the way.
I call that Occam's razor, Vinnie. Come on. This was a 5-year marriage that was so bad that the arresting officer included the word contentious in the PCA. This was an ongoing tense battle. And yes, I mean, motive is money and control and getting him out of the way. PAS, I'm so glad Randy brought it up. It's a real thing. It's a nightmare to have to deal with. But at the end of the day, getting him out of the way and eliminating an ongoing tense custody battle where he was showing strong, the court was showing indications that maybe he was the favored parent. Maybe the kids needed to be in his care because of this tension and this PAS. And so removing him from the equation paves the way for her to have full access to that trust. Occam's razor.
Yeah. Randy, your thoughts about the trust aspect of all this?
Yeah, and PAS is parental alienation syndrome is what Erica's talking about. But as far as the trust, it's a smart move by the parents. They're basically saying, Mom doesn't have any money. Dad, you can't go after Mom's money. Court, you can't make her pay support from that money. It's not hers until Dad's out of the way or the kids are over the age of 18. So they've structured their trust in a way that basically says Mom is not going to be saddled with this enormous wealth that the court can use to offset equities or to make her pay support to the husband. So it's a good protective measure. They also don't want Dad, the ex-husband, to have any end-around moves to get any of their hard-earned money. That's what trusts are for. That's what good trust and estates lawyers do. And apparently they had some very good trust and estate lawyering.
The best money can buy, right? The best money can buy. Erica, to me, the thing that says no further legal entanglements, this was never going to end. The back and forth here was never going to end, whatever they're going to argue about. What school should they go to? Where should they live? Where should they go for summer vacation? Are they going to be at my house over the holidays, your house? It never ends, Erica. So these legal entanglements could only end, as Randy said, when the children turn 18 or when one of the parents is gone.
Or if there's a conservatorship in place, go as long as 21. If you have health insurance involved and kids attending college, it could go as far as 25 or 26. Parents don't stop being parents at the age of 18 or when their children turn 18. So legal entanglements don't necessarily until the 18th birthday. And she could have felt, I'm guessing that she felt that this was her only way out, and it felt like an impossible hill for her to climb.
Yeah. Well, Randy knows these things go on forever. That's how he gets paid, right?
Or it could have been her new husband thought, he's not going to have any access to his new wife's money until there were no legal entanglements because ex-husband was gone.
All right. Randy Kessler, Erica Morris, great to have you both. Thank you so much. These cases are tough. When a parent is accused of murdering another parent, that's because of the absolute devastation it does to the children. And in this case of Jared Bridegan, this is even more devastating because he started a new family. And that just doubles the devastation because all these children no longer have their dad. Now, I personally will never understand how a parent could do this to their own child, or for that matter, anyone else's child. But we'll see what the jury says. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.